I want to thank you for joining our June 22nd Intermediate Planning webinar. Today we'll be reviewing the scenario Enrolling Acres into CRP. My name is Dan Bott and I am one of the Precision Business Planning Specialists here at AgSolver. To go through today's agenda, we'll go through our introduction, identify zones within fields where alternative management such as CRP could be placed due to field and financial performance. We'll select and work scenarios representing standard assumptions and associated cost based off of those CRP scenarios, which we'll be looking at a pollinator habitat. Then select zones and work all alternative management scenarios, return on investments on zones and across the entire field for the scenarios. And then we'll wrap up with any questions anyone might have. We are in Q&A mode for today. So if you have any questions, you can type your questions in the chat box under my contact info, where I have my email and also my phone number. And we will answer those throughout the webinar. We'll hop into Profit Zone Manager. So here is a field located in north central Iowa. This is just west of Green or southeast of Mason City. This is a 145 acre field roughly. And here we're looking at 2010 yield data coupled with the 2010 budget. We also have yield data on this field for 2008 and also 2009. We do not have any as applied data for this field. And this field in particular, it's an interesting, it shows the three zones that we always talk about really well. So within this field we have a sandy ridge that runs to the southwest, in the southwest corner here, and we call this our no-cost zone. Year in, year out, we have a hard time producing a profit on it due to that sandy ridge. If we pull up our soils overview, you can see the yield, the financial performance map follows that sandy ridge almost to an exact T. In the northeast and northwest corner, there's actually a water management issue going on within this field. If we switch over to the return on investment map, these areas stick out even more. And in the revenue limited zone, this is where we want to manage our expenses so we can produce a profit. And then in our third zone, we'll use Zone Finder to filter this area. We'll filter this at 10% return on investment. You can see the areas where we really want to miss production, because this is where we can draw and make majority of our revenue out of this field. But for time being, we're going to focus in on this sandy ridge. What are we going to do with it? And so the first option that we're going to look at for this is enrolling that acreage into a pollinator habitat. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to filter this field at 0% return on investment so we can see and outline that area within the field. We also can go to our soils data, and we see that the soil type is 41B and also 175B. So if we scroll down, 41B, CSR2 on that is 39. We have a total of right around 7 acres. Percentage of the field, a little over 4.5%. And then you can see the average corn and soybean yields. If we go to 170, which is right north of it here, you can see we have roughly right around another 7 acres with a CSR2 of 51. Now what I'm going to do, we're going to copy a scenario, and we're going to make a carbon copy of our actual production 2010 scenario and rename it. We'll call this CRP planning scenario. And what we're doing here, think of this as a Word of an agenda. Instead of creating an entire new Word document with the same information, we're just going to copy that and then that document or that agenda and then just rename it. So CRP planning scenario, click save. And it's saving that yield information along with the representative crop budget that we have, and then we're going to compare the CRP scenario to our actual production scenario. So comparing this scenario where we have corn production CRP to just straight corn production. So after we've created ours, we're going to draw our CRP zone. So I filtered the map at 0% return on investment. Underneath our CRP planning scenario, we have a green button called Add Zone. Go ahead and select that. Our drawing tools populate. We have our polygon drawing tool. Also, if we were working with the NRCS and they have already created a shapefile for that CRP zone, we can upload that shapefile and plug that into Profit Zone Manager and adjust our budget accordingly. But for right now, we're going to manually draw a zone within Profit Zone Manager for that CRP area. We'll come in and just start placing points. It's easy to create zones in Profit Zone Manager. And when I'm creating this zone, I'm trying to make it semi-manageable to farm around. So to close out our zone, we're going to connect our last point to our first point. That brings up our specific budget for this field. We're going to name this zone Pollinator Habitat. CP42. CP42 is the technical definition of pollinator habitat. You can see our zone average yield on that area is 107 bushels per acre. And since we're taking this acreage out of production, we're going to reduce commodity price since we won't be raising corn on it anymore. And for other revenue, we're going to have a conservation payment. And let's just project that we have a $280 annual CRP payment. And then what I like to do in CRP cases in particular, usually there's some type of cost share to get it established. So say we have $200 per acre worth of cost share money. I'm actually going to amortize that over the life of the contract, so 10 years. So we'll add additional $20. And the reason why I'm doing this, I want to see the average performance year in, year out on how this zone is going to affect the financial performance. We could front load all of these costs, but for me, I like to amortize it out over the life of the 10-year contract. I'm going to call this other revenue cost share. FSA cost share. So equipment, say to get it established, we'll drop that. And on the expense side, we're going to amortize our cost over the life of the 10-year contract. So say to get it established, equipment cost is going to cost us roughly right around $50. Divide that by 10, $5 an acre. Cost for the pollinator habitat is actually more expensive than one might think. So Seen cost upwards of $135 an acre, depending on how many wildflowers you get in the mix. So we'll divide that 135 by 10, $13.50. $13.50. Fertilizer, gonna drop that to 0. Herbicide, insecticide, move that to 0. Insurance, 0. Interest, 0. Grain drying, handling, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete these subcategories by clicking on the red minus button. We'll still leave a land cost in there. Say this is a rented CRP payment is going to the farmer, but the farmer is still going to pay cash rent on the field. Labor, that's 0. Red home personal, 0. Custom hire, 0. And then we'll drop other expenses to 0 also. We'll go ahead and save that budget for this representative zone in the field. So now we're comparing our zone performance for this field, whereas before when we were raising corn on this 17.8 acres, we were producing roughly 107.5 bushels per acre. Our profit was actually negative $60 per acre. Return on investment was negative 24%, and we were losing a total of $2,800. But since we're moving this over to an alternative management, now we're actually making roughly right around $60 an acre. Return on investment went from negative 24% to a positive 24%. We've greatly increased our production efficiency. That's huge. This is what we really want to focus on. Acreage opportunity ratio, drop that by 68%. And then also we have our total zone profit of right around $1,000 on that particular zone. Now we can come up and compare scenarios. So now instead of comparing the entire field or entire zone, we're going to compare the entire field and see how that affects the overall production efficiency for this field. So on the left-hand side, we have our actual production 2010 scenario comparing to our CRP scenario where we're also raising corn within this field. We've taken field average yield by taking acreage out of production by about 9.5 bushels. Profit went from $138 an acre to $166 an acre. We increased ROI by 7%. More importantly, production efficiency rose roughly about 40 bushels. We decreased our acreage opportunity ratio by about 9%. We've decreased our overall expenses by about $8,000 on this field, and we've rose and taken profitability from 20,000 to 24,000, and we've shifted acres from unprofitable to profitable. Now we can look at this and we'll hop back into actual production. So on this case in particular, here we're looking at a profit map. Pull off the soils overview layer. If we look at a yield map, we can see that this area on that sandy soil type can easily drop off about 100 bushels. Look at our return on investment map. Filter this at negative 25% return on investment. You can really see where that sandy ridge sticks out within this field. When we look at the break-even yield increase, the yield increase that we need on this field to break even, or especially on that sandy ridge, just go ahead and select some of these. So on the majority of this sandy ridge, we need to increase yield by right around 125 bushels just to break even. And right now we have this range selected from, we need to increase production, at a starting point of 63 bushels all the way up to 125. On the flip side of that, we have a break-even commodity price map. So on that sandy ridge, we actually need $8 corn just to break even. So we can't increase production on this sandy ridge. We can't market our way out of this situation because we're looking at $8 corn. If this area was over in here where we're looking at maybe $4, $4.80, even $5 corn, that might be doable, but on this sandy ridge, it's going to be pretty tough. Then it comes down to, all right, what's our break-even expense decrease? So if we decrease expenses by anywhere from 476 to 595, I'm pulling these numbers over here, that's a little bit more doable where we're looking at alternative management. And sometimes we're not even asking these alternative management scenarios to produce a profit or make us money. We're just asking these alternative management practices to lose less in corn production. Because before, if we look at that zone, we're losing $2,800 on about 18 acres. So now I want to open the floor up for any questions anyone might have. I also want to mention that this webinar will be posted on YouTube once it is completed. And please feel free to get a hold of me if you want to run this scenario on your own field, or if you want to see what the scenario would look like if we amortized all of the cost up front. And when we're doing a full precision business plan, here we've just taken care of one resource concern within the field, and that's the sandy ridge. To build out this precision business plan, we would address, all right, what are we going to do to mitigate this water management issue in the northeast and northwest corner? And we're going to take those cost savings and then reapply those to the portion of the field where we can be our revenue enhancement zone, where we can really try to maximize inputs to get to that higher yield, but ultimately get to a higher financial performance on this field. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email or call me. It's what I'm here for. So my main role within AgSolver is creating scenarios. So I want to thank everyone for joining our June 22nd intermediate planning webinar. We'll see you next week. Have a good week, everyone. Bye.